A Roman soldier stands in a crowded, dusty courtyard. The sun is unforgiving, beating down on the stone pavement. He holds a heavy, forged iron spike in his right hand. In his left, he rests his calloused fingers against a rough, splintered beam of olive wood. He does not know the history of this wood. He does not care where it grew, who cut it down, or how long it has been drying in the Judean sun. To him, it is just an instrument of execution. It is an everyday tool of the Roman Empire, designed for one specific purpose: to silence enemies, to bring death. We will come back to this soldier, and we will come back to that heavy piece of olive wood, but not yet. If you trace the timeline of humanity all the way back to its very first breath, you do not find a stone city. You do not find a towering temple. You do not even find a desert. You find a garden. This is not a story about agriculture. This is not a story about ancient landscapes. This is not a story about botanical history. This is a story about how the God of the universe used 4 specific pieces of wood to completely reverse the curse of sin. You've probably read the Bible as a collection of completely separate events. A sea parts in one chapter, a giant falls in another, a blind man suddenly sees. But underneath the surface of these ancient, separated texts runs a single, continuous, unbreakable thread. God is a master builder, and he has a habit of using the exact things that broke the world to put it back together. Think about how human history is usually told. We measure time by empires, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Romans. We measure progress by weapons, bronze swords, iron chariots, nuclear fission. But God measures the unfolding of human destiny through something much quieter. He measures it through trees. Before the empires existed, before the swords were forged, there was a garden, and in the center of that garden stood the very first piece of wood that would change everything. You know the moment. The air is cool, the garden is perfect, and a woman named Eve stands before a tree in the center of Eden. The ancient text calls it the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Beside her is Adam, the first man. He is silent, watching. The original Hebrew word used here in the book of Genesis is etz. It translates to tree, but it also carries a much broader meaning. It means wood, timber, a raw, unshaped piece of creation. You can imagine the heavy tension in the air. God had given them an entire world to rule. Rivers, mountains, animals, endless fields of green. But he placed a firm boundary at this one specific piece of wood. The enemy did not tempt them with a weapon. He tempted them with autonomy. The lie was simple, and it is the exact same lie you and I fight against today. You do not need God. You can be God. Eve reached out. Adam took the fruit, and the world fractured. The curse of sin entered the human bloodstream not through a violent global war, but through an act of quiet rebellion beneath branches and leaves. Death entered the world through a tree. For thousands of years, humanity would carry the crushing weight of that one terrible choice. Every sickness you have ever endured, every broken relationship, every tear shed at a graveside traces its origin back to the shadow of this first tree. The wood of Eden became the architecture of our ruin. Here is what most people miss. God did not abandon the garden. He did not burn the tree to the ground and walk away from his creation in disgust. Instead, he began a rescue mission that would stretch across millennia, and he chose to use the exact same material to save us that we used to destroy ourselves: wood. Generations pass. The descendants of Adam and Eve multiply, fracture, and eventually find themselves enslaved in the brutal empire of Egypt. The world is dark. Heaven seems silent, and this is where we find ourselves staring at the second tree. An aging shepherd named Moses is walking through the harsh, unforgiving desert of Midian. He is a fugitive. He is a failure. He murdered a man in Egypt and ran for his life. For 40 years he has been hiding in the dust, watching sheep, convinced that his story is completely over. And then he sees it. A desert shrub, a bush, a piece of wood rooted in the dry earth. But it is on fire. Moses stops. You would stop too. Out in the desert, dry bushes catch fire all the time under the scorching sun. They burn hot, they turn to white ash in seconds, and the wind blows them away. But this is different. The wood is burning, but it is not burning up. The leaves are not turning to ash. The branches are not blackening. God has placed his raw, holy, uncontainable presence directly into a piece of wood. The bush does not burn up because God is not there to consume. He is there to call. From this burning tree, God speaks a name. He calls Moses to go back to Egypt, to stand before the most powerful man on earth, and to lead a nation to freedom. The first tree brought a curse. The second tree brought a calling. God is taking the wood of the earth and reclaiming it. If you are seeing this pattern for the first time, you are not alone. Most of us were taught to read the Bible as a collection of disjointed moral lessons, a hero to copy here, a villain to avoid there. But when you step back, you see the brilliant, unbroken architecture of a God who wastes absolutely nothing. He takes the exact instruments of our failure and turns them into the vehicles of our freedom. If this perspective is changing how you read Scripture, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We look at these hidden threads every single week. Now, let us move forward, because the stakes are about to get infinitely higher. Centuries pass. The nation of Israel escapes the desert. They build a kingdom. They construct a magnificent temple lined with carved cedar wood, but human nature remains fractured. The kingdom splits, the people fall into exile, and eventually heaven goes completely silent. For 400 years, there are no burning bushes. There are no prophets. There is just waiting. And then a child is born in Bethlehem. When this child grows up, he does not become a priest in the temple. He does not become a wealthy merchant. He does not become a soldier in the Roman army. He becomes a carpenter. Think about the profound irony of this. For 30 years, the creator of the universe, the God who spoke the forests of the earth into existence, spends his days with calloused hands working with wood. He cuts it, he sands it, he shapes it. He knows the grain, he knows the weight of it. His name is Jesus. Eventually, his public ministry begins. For 3 years, he heals the sick, he raises the dead, and he completely upends the corrupt religious systems of his day. The authorities are terrified of his influence. They decide he must be silenced permanently, and they choose the most brutal, humiliating method the Roman Empire has ever invented: crucifixion. Pay attention to this. In the original Greek language of the New Testament, the standard word for cross is stauros. But the writers of the New Testament deliberately choose another word when they want to make a theological point. The word is Xylon. It literally means wood. It means timber. It means a tree. Years later, a fisherman named Peter, a rough, blue-collar man who watched his best friend be dragged away to die, sits down to write a letter to the persecuted early church. Peter wants to explain exactly what happened on that dark Friday. He wants them to understand the sheer magnitude of the rescue mission. He could have used any phrase. He could have simply said Jesus was executed. But in the second chapter of his first letter, Peter writes this: "He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, on the Xylon." Peter connects the dots. He looks all the way back to the quiet Garden of Eden, and he looks up at the violent hill of Calvary, and he realizes they are the exact same battlefield. The war that started at a tree was going to end at a tree. And this brings us right back to the dusty courtyard. And there, in that dusty courtyard, the Roman soldier we saw at the very beginning finishes his work. He raises the heavy iron spike. He brings the hammer down. He drives the metal deep into the rough beam of olive wood. The soldier thinks he is just executing another rebel. He does not know that he is actively participating in the ultimate reversal of human history. The heavy wooden cross is lifted up, the sky turns black, and the blood of God falls onto the dirt. Now watch what happens next. In the 2nd century, an early church leader and historian named Irenaeus of Lyons wrote something profound. He looked back at the sweeping, unbroken history of the Bible and realized exactly what God was doing. Irenaeus wrote that the debt humanity incurred through a tree had to be canceled through a tree. The symmetry is breathtaking. Adam reached out his hand to take the fruit in total disobedience. Jesus stretched out his hands on the wood in total obedience. Adam brought death through the wood of Eden. Jesus brought life through the wood of Golgotha. But how exactly does life overcome that kind of death? There is a process in botany, in the modern scientific study of trees, called compartmentalization. When a tree is deeply wounded, when a heavy iron nail is driven into its trunk, the tree does not heal the way human skin heals. It does not regenerate the damaged tissue. It does not push the nail out. Instead, the tree does something incredible. It grows around the wound. It absorbs the iron nail into its own body. It isolates the foreign, destructive object, covers it with new, living wood, and continues to grow. The nail remains inside, but the tree swallows the damage. It takes the death into itself, and it keeps living. On the hill of Calvary, the Creator of the universe allowed the iron spikes to be driven into his hands and into the wood. He took the deadly, destructive force of human sin, absorbed it entirely into his own body, and swallowed death alive. The 3rd tree is the cross. It absorbed the wrath, it absorbed the curse, and it changes absolutely everything. But the story does not end at a tomb. It does not even end in the 1st century. It ends at the very edge of eternity. An old man named John is sitting in a brutal prison colony on a black volcanic rock in the Aegean Sea. The island is called Patmos. He is tired. He is the last living disciple, and there God pulls back the curtain of heaven and shows John the end of all things. John sees a new heaven and a new earth. He sees a city coming down from God, and right in the middle of this perfect, shining city, a river is flowing, and on either side of the river stands the 4th tree. The ancient text calls it the Tree of Life. This is the exact same tree that was hidden away in the Garden of Eden thousands of years ago. God did not destroy it. He preserved it. And now, at the end of human history, he brings it back. But look closely at what John writes in the 22nd chapter of Revelation. He says the tree produces 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Not just for the healing of individuals, for the healing of the nations. Every war, every border dispute, every political hatred, every drop of spilled blood across human history, healed by the leaves of the final tree. The 1st tree brought a curse. The 2nd tree held the calling. The 3rd tree paid the price. And the 4th tree brings ultimate, eternal restoration. God took the very instrument of our ruin and he turned it into the architecture of our salvation. Here are 3 things you must take away from this. First, God never wastes your failures. The human race broke the world using a piece of wood, and God used a piece of wood to save it. If he can redeem the absolute tragedy of Eden, he can redeem whatever is broken in your life right now. Nothing is beyond his ability to repurpose for good. Second, the cross was not an accident. It was not a backup plan. The Roman soldier driving the nail thought he was just ending a rebellion. He did not realize he was participating in a rescue mission planned since the foundation of the world. God's timing in your life is just as deliberate. Even the painful moments are being woven into a much larger restoration. And finally, the tree of life is waiting. Whatever grief you are carrying today, whatever sickness, whatever quiet despair wakes you up in the middle of the night, it has an expiration date. The leaves are for the healing of the nations, and that includes you. The curse will be broken. The tears will be wiped away. Which of these 4 trees changes the way you see your own story? Tell me below.